Welcome fathers who are looking to inspire their kids and become fearless. This is the Become a Fearless Father show and I'm your host, Klaas van Oosterhout. I'm a father of 2 boys, husband and entrepreneur. This show is created to teach you how to take control and enjoy the most difficult job you've ever faced, fatherhood. I'm going to keep it real and share real life experience. A heads up, there is no magic pill. You will have to put in the hours, sweat and tears to achieve victory. Are you ready to improve your health, wealth, relationships, knowledge and become the hero your family needs you to be? I know you are. So get your pen and paper ready and let's become fearless fathers together.
Welcome everybody. We are live here with Dr. Andrew Cope. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to, from here on out, say Andy. Is that okay?
Please do.
All right, great. Thank you. Just in case. Thank you so much for being on. I've been looking forward to this all weekend. I loved your pictures. You always have a huge smile on every single picture that I see, which for me is like, okay, this is going to be fun. And I'm just dying to learn from you about how can I used to have that smile all the time and I lost it during the way. So I'm really dying to dive into this deeply. But first of all, Andy, tell us a little bit more about you. Who's Andy and what have you been doing so far to come up to where you are now?
Okay. Well, thanks for having me on your wonderful webinar, by the way. I'm delighted and excited, I think honoured more than anything. Well, basically, Klaas, for the last 12 years, in fact, getting on for 13, 14 years now, I've been researching a subject called positive psychology, which is essentially the science of happiness and the science of well-being, the science of feeling amazing. So what I've been doing is seeking out happy people in the UK, of which there aren't that many, following them around and documenting that into a big PhD thesis, my friend. So it's 130,000 academic words. So I become a doctor. The UK's only one and only doctor of happiness. Wow. So, and it's completely the opposite of normal psychology. So I studied traditional psychology for many years at university first time, and that was about phobias, disorders, anxiety, depression, paranoia, all the shit that can go wrong with you. And that's interesting and it's useful, but we never ever had a single lecture on happiness or well-being, or it's almost like positivity wasn't a valid emotion for studying. So back in 2005, I set out to a place called Loughborough University in the UK to flip psychology totally on its head. So if you think about it, forever psychology has always been about illness. It's always been about studying people who are not feeling very well to make them better. But we've missed a trick. We've never, ever, ever studied people who are already feeling amazing. So what I decided to do was, it's what I call the 2%ers, the small percentage of the population that we can all think of in our heads right now, who are shining, who are happy, who are smiley, who've got energy. Who are these people, Klaas? What are they doing? And most importantly, what can we learn from them that we can then put into practice so that we can feel amazing as well? So that's what I've been doing for 12 years. And it's changed my life. And I'd like to share some top tips and some of the science with the listeners this evening.
Nice. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to sharing this now live and later on as a recording. And I actually, maybe it sounds weird, I actually want to start talking with you about my weekend. And not just about my weekend, but something that happened, and I'd like to go in a little bit deep. The reason for that is my wife and myself took our 2 young kids to the zoo, which the zoo should be a very exciting, fun experience. And for us, it was. Because I kind of plan and I kind of prepare myself, okay, this is what I want to achieve mindset-wise. And if something happens, you know, make sure that kids have as much fun as possible and us as well. However, I also like to look at other parents, fathers in particular, to see, you know, to learn from them. How do they do it?
What's gone wrong, Klaas? Tell me.
I was so surprised. I mean, they were losing it. They were yelling, screaming at their kids, pulling them. In one occasion, I think it was the mother even hit their kid for what I thought was absolutely nothing. The kid was just crying, threw away his cup. It hit another girl on the head. It happens, you know. And then the father was finally there, and he was going off, and they finally took the mobile phone. I think the kid was 2 something, and just kept making sure that the kid was looking at something on the mobile phone. And I was just so surprised. I was like, you go to the zoo to have fun. And I know it was hot. I got to admit, it was a very hot day. I just told you, I live in Spain. It was one of those days that you're like, we should have gone to the beach, or we should have gone to the pool or something. But I was still so surprised. So I was just wondering, and that was the first thing I thought when I was going over, like, what am I going to ask? I want to figure this out with you. It's like, okay, so what is it that makes fathers just lose it while they're at a day that they should have fun and everybody should be positive and enjoying themselves?
Mate, I think it's a symptomatic of a bigger problem with society. It's what we call in the UK, I call it busyness, B-U-S-Y-N-E-S-S. And busyness means we are running and rushing through our life so fast that we sometimes forget to have fun along the way. I mean, it's not normally at the zoo, it's normally the commute to work, so much traffic. You know, a lot of people are grumbling and moaning about the traffic without realizing they are the traffic. You know what I mean? Is that we're so getting through life so quickly that we're not taking time out to enjoy the moment. And everybody's at the zoo taking pictures and pictures and pictures, and really you don't need any pictures at the zoo. Just embrace the moment and live in the now. And then I know that in your case you're smiling because you know this, but there are so many people who are so stressed with life, right, that they are rushing through it at 100 miles an hour. I have this thing where most people are living life fast, but are we living it well? And Klaas, most people aren't living it well. That stress spills over into your family life. Yeah, you take your kids to the zoo, but your mind's not at the zoo. Your mind's on your emails when you get home, or you sending the kids off to see the elephants so that you can spend some time in the cafe catching up with your emails. That is such bad parenting, but you see it all the time, all the time. And I think one of the essences of, you know, being in the moment with your kids is really being there. I mean, genuinely being in the moment with the kids and blocking everything else out. And that's quite easy to say. It's quite hard to do, because we're rushing. Like I say, we're rushing headlong through life. I mean, the average lifespan, Klaas, is 4,000 weeks. So I often announce that in my workshops in the UK. If you announce that to children, you say you're going to live for 4,000 weeks. Children go wild with happiness. They're like, oh my gosh, 4,000 weeks. That's like forever. That's brilliant. Thank you for sharing that, Andy. But if you share that same statistic with people of my age, and I say to a corporate audience, you're going to live for about 4,000 weeks, there's not any punching of the air. There's no high-fiving. There's more of a collective look of horror and shock as people calculate how many weeks they've got left. And I think it's that coming from, let's start living life. Let's slow down a little bit and start to enjoy our 4,000 weeks instead of trying to get them over with. In fact, there's a phrase called destination addiction, which basically means that on a Monday morning, most people's aim is to get through the week, is to survive the week. So you might not actually say it, but the working population on Monday, when the alarm goes, most people are, oh, okay, here we go again, another week to survive. Well, you might have a holiday booked in 3 weeks, and somebody says, how are you? Only 3 weeks to go. And what happens, of course, is we are therefore reserving our happiness for a special occasion at the weekend, or reserving our happiness for especially in 3 weeks' time, or I'll be happy when I retire. And all the time we're putting happiness in the wrong time zone. We're putting it at some point in the future, whereas your story about the weekend is learning to be happy now is such a key skill.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. I must actually admit to you that I learned about the being present, like really being present with my kids over the summer. Here in Spain, the summer is very long, and I'm trying to build up my new business, become a fearless father, and I have all these ideas in my head. So, you know, I have at one end, my wife has her job, so she goes actually early in the morning to her work, and then I'm with the kids all day long, and I planned it out so that I could do some work as well while they are playing or whatever. And I noticed that I lost my patience when I'm working and they're coming to my desk asking me something. And the last couple of weeks, I finally started realizing, like, okay, I am so tense and stressed. It's because I'm not focused on what actually really matters. I'm trying to teach people to become a fearless father, but at the same time, what I'm doing is I'm doing my work instead of being the fearless father for my kids. I'm like, no wonder I'm losing my patience and I'm yelling at them. So I said, that's it. So now the kids go to school at 1. This month they come home pretty early. And I said, look, I work until 12:30 and then I'm going to pick them up and that's it. I know I have lots of stuff to do, but I'm not doing that. I'm focusing on them. And I must admit, Andy, it's such a difference. I'm more relaxed and they are loving it. We're playing memory, we're playing puzzles, we're doing what I call mastery. So I let my oldest one write. So he improves his skill on that. And then with my youngest one, we're drawing. And it's like what you just mentioned. It's like being present and living in the moment. And it's a complete shift in everything.
Mate, but it also means that you've got to really focus before 12:30 on getting your work done. You probably get twice as much work done because you're totally focused on your work, and then you're totally focused on your children. But I don't know how old are your children? Are they little?
They're little. They're 2, almost 3 and 5.
Oh man, you see, this is the most important time of their entire life, my friend. Their entire life. You know, the significance that you're playing in their life is incredible, because the thing about emotions and particularly happiness isn't a real thing. Okay, Klaus. So happiness isn't a thing. Happiness is a feeling. Okay, so it doesn't exist anywhere outside. It exists it's an internal thing. And I think in terms of getting your kids to be happy, nobody ever teaches you how to think. So you've never had a thinking lesson, and you don't teach your children how to think. It's the most important thing you ever learn to do. Nobody formally teaches you how to do it. But what they will do is they will look up at their role models, which is you and their mum and their grandparents, and they will copy what you do. It's called social learning, and that is basically it. So without you formally teaching them how to think and how to speak, and they will just look at you. Dad is the hero. Whether you're a good dad or a bad dad is relevant. You are a hero in their eyes, particularly if you've got a boy. Okay, and they will copy exactly what you do. They will look up at you and they'll go, oh, that's how you do it. That's how you think. That's how you behave. So the time that you're spending with them is just the most important thing, because you are shaping their entire future. I don't know if you've heard of epigenetics. It's like a new area of a gene. I'm not clever enough to understand it, Klaus, but basically epigenetics essentially it means that your genes aren't fixed. We used to think your genes were fixed, okay, but up until the age of about 7, your genes are flexible. You can shape them. So look, if we take an example of love. So love, if you can bathe a child in love, and they feel totally in the moment with their dad, and they have a nice calm upbringing, and they feel love up to the age of 7, that literally rewires their genetic makeup. That sets them up for life. And if you take the opposite of that, if they're ignored and they're on an iPad and they have no human contact and they have bad parenting, then that will once again literally rewire their brain in the wrong way, will set their life up, their genetic makeup up forever. So what you're doing is so crucial. But as you've alluded to, it's not easy. It's easier probably to take some work to the zoo. It's easier to continue working till 5 o'clock and get irritated with your children. That's the easiest thing, mate, and that's what most people do. They do what's easiest, but at least you're trying to do what's right. Trying.
It's all about trying in the end. Trial and error, I say. And what I've noticed so far as being a father, you fail more often than you succeed. But when you succeed, it's really awesome, and you find your way through it. But they change so fast. It's like you figure out something, they like it, and then within a month, it's like, boop, and they just switch. So you got to keep up as well, which makes it very interesting. But
it's exhausting, mate. It's a bit like if you're with your children pretty much from 12:30 all the way through. That's a bit like being a primary school teacher. You're not far off, and that is exhausting. That is physically and emotionally exhausting. So once again, we're back to the point. It isn't easy to be the best dad in the world. It's easy to be average dad, and that's why most people are. That's what average means. It means you're doing what everybody else does. So daring to stand out, daring to throw yourself wholeheartedly into parenting and be the best parent you can be, is the biggest thing you'll ever do for your children.
Hey, sorry for the interruption. I know you're really enjoying the show. Just want to make sure, if you're liking this information, please subscribe and press the like button. And also, go visit becomeafearlessfather.com. You get the opportunity to share your biggest challenge at the moment as a father, and it gives me the opportunity to try and help you overcome this. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of the show.
There's this. I've just been reading up on something by a guy. I can't remember his name. I think Thomas Przinski or something. So a guy. He talks about terror management theory, and there's no laughs in it, mate. He basically, his argument is, which he's wrong on, but his argument is humans are insignificant animals groping in a universe for meaningless survival, that we are a dot of life on a ball of rock in a solar system, and we are just destined to die and decay. I mean, there's no laughs in that, mate. He says that human life is about as significant as a pineapple chunk. Okay. However, how wrong is he? So in the galaxy, if you look at the galaxy and you look at you and your family from another planet looking at Earth, you are insignificant. Okay, you are a dot of energy on a ball of rock in the solar system. But if you look at you from the eyes of your children, you are the most significant thing in their life ever. So therefore, you need to wield your influence in a really powerful way, which, you know, you are at least giving it a bloody good go, mate.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Talking a little bit earlier about, having people to stay positive during such an experience. Especially, you mentioned just, we work 5 days, we start on Monday, we're always saying, I'm wishing that it's weekend, then it's Saturday, and then you go to the zoo because that's supposed to be fun, and you go all off. So we covered the fact that, okay, it's good to stay positive and happy. However, I've also, I watch a lot of YouTube movies with motivation and stuff like that, and they keep repeating, to master something, you need to practice it 10,000 hours. That means that if I finally know, like, okay, these are the things that I have to do to be positive, there will probably be some moments that I will still go off, And I'm just wondering, okay, so which steps should a father take when it's too late? When I already went off, when I started screaming or yelling, or maybe even worse, I completely lost it and I spanked my kid, what now?
Okay, mate. Well, that's a tough one. I mean, I think I'll come to it, but I think it would be better if you told parents how not to end up like that in the first place. So we need to avoid that. But I think it's okay. Everybody's going to have a bad day. So remember, I've spent 12 years doing a PhD in happiness. I've been interviewing happy people, and everybody has bad days. Even happy people have downtime. The key to all of this is to minimize that downtime and reduce the number of bad days you're having. And if there's a sort of a graph of well-being from your high point to your low point, then what you find is that far too many people are spending far too much of their time in the bottom third of that emotional diagram. And so, and without getting too deep, because I want to keep this really simple, is that actually it's not your children that are upsetting you. It's the way you're thinking about your children. Everything is coming to your emotions through thought processes. So every time you get angry, it's not really the children making you angry. When you're commuting to work and the bad driver cuts you up, it's not the bad driver that's making you angry. It's the way you're thinking about the bad driver. Always, Klaas. Always, it's the thinking. So the key to happiness, really, and the key to staying calm is to be able to take control of your own thinking. And once again, that's very easy for me to sit here and say, but in the heat of the moment, that can be quite a difficult thing to do. And it's easy to forget that everything's coming to us through thought. I mean, there's a really smart thing, emotional intelligence, the Daniel Goleman thing. He talks about, and I think it applies to parenting beautifully, he talks about emotional soup. And by that, he means that in any social situation, so in a family or a workplace where people are thrown together, everybody is having a say in the flavor or the atmosphere of the soup. So in your family, if there's you and your wife and your 2 children, in the evening, everybody's having a little say in whether it's a good evening or not. You're all adding an emotion, you're adding some flavors. So 2 things come out of that. The first one is to ask yourself honestly, what flavors are you adding? Are they the best you can? Or are you adding anger? Are you adding stress? Are you adding, or you're adding love and happiness and positivity? Because that's really powerful as a parent. So the question is, what are you adding? And the second thing I think is really interesting is, in a family situation, who has the biggest say in the flavor of the family soup? And a couple of arguments on this one. The first one, obviously, is the parents, because they are the adults. They are having a bigger influence on the flavor. However, when your children get older, there is a line of thought that says a teenage daughter has a very, very big impact on the emotions of a family. So actually, have you got a girl?
No.
Okay. Because when they get to be about 14, the girls can kill the whole thing, man, with a mood. You know, a teenage girl in a mood is a very difficult one to change. So they have a really, really big influence. So all the dads listening to this, if your teenage daughter is angry, whew, that's a difficult thing to cope with. But also linking in with the emotional soup, because I love the emotional soup, because it begins to, I have to point the finger back at me and ask myself honestly, okay, when I go through the door in the evening, what flavors am I adding to my family? Am I adding good or bad? And that ties in with another theory called the 4-minute rule, which is, I heard it from a guy called Steve McDermott. And the 4-minute rule basically says that it takes about 4 minutes for other people to truly catch how you feel. So your emotions are what we call an open loop. So you are an emotionally contagious person. You cannot not have an impact on people. So what that means is when you come home from work, is you've got to make sure the first 4 minutes are really super positive and really upbeat, and the rest of the evening then will take care of itself, because you as the parent have added some brilliant flavors in that first 4 minutes. So, and if I give you an example of what I did when my kids are big now, but when they were small, I used to go home like all the other parents, fall through the door exhausted, ask my kids, how was school? They would say, boring. I'd say, what did you learn? They would say, I can't remember. And that was the end of the conversation. Yeah. And that was an epic failure on my behalf. So I thought, okay, emotional soup, 4-minute rule. Let's do it differently. It's not my kids' fault that Dad is asking such a shit question. So I went home, and when they were little, and I said to the kids, I bounded through the door with lots of energy and real positivity. And I said to the kids, how was your day today? Was it good, fantastic, or brilliant? So what was the highlight of your day? They were 7 and 4 at the time. My little girl, she said, Dad, it was brilliant. So I said, okay, so 4-minute rule, sit down, tell me about it. What made it brilliant? So off she goes. And honestly, mate, all evening she was on a high because Dad was interested in her. I was asking positive questions. She couldn't wait to share me the best thing she'd done during the day. That's the first time, sadly, I'd ever had a really positive conversation with my daughter, because I'd started to ask a better question. And my son was 3. So how was nursery? Was it good, fantastic, or brilliant? He says, it was brilliant, Dad. We had chips for dinner. And, you know, I know it's a trivial thing, and chips isn't the issue, but the coming home being the best dad in the world just for 4 minutes is the smallest change that I've done that's had the biggest impact on my family. And we still do it now. My kids are old now, but we still do. How was your day? Good, fantastic, or brilliant? So you, in terms of when your wife gets home from work, instead of how was work, what was the highlight of your day? Is a slightly different question that opens your family up to a more positive conversation.
Absolutely, I love that. I was almost going to ask, does that also count for when your wife comes home? And you just answered that, so I appreciate that.
But if you compare that, Klaas, if you just go the opposite very quickly, you need to understand that for about 10 years in my marriage, the first 10 years of our married life, I did the opposite. I didn't know any of this. So my wife and I would have a competition every single night to see who's had the worst day. Yeah, I would say to her, how was your day? Oh, it was rubbish. This has happened, that's happened. I've hated it. How was yours? Oh, mine was bad as well. So what we were doing is we were saving the worst bits of our day to share with the people that we love the most. And that's just the way it was for 10 years, my friend, 10 years, because that's the way that it was. But that's the crucial thing about positive psychology, is that's not the way it has to be. So all of this is learned behaviors. You know, all the stuff we're talking about here there's a saying one of my friends says, you know, practice makes permanent. So the more we practice it, the more it becomes wired into our thinking, and the more effortless it becomes. But there's effort involved in retraining your brain and your habits in the first place.
Yep, absolutely. I'm going to have questions because I want to continue on this. I'm really enjoying this part. I was looking at your website, and I think you just changed it the other Brilliance, but for some reason I quickly saw something about hugs, and I wanted to look at it again today, and I couldn't find it, but I had jumped at that. And you were just mentioning first 4 minutes coming home is the most important. It's funny. I just made a note together with my kids. So with my youngest one, I was drawing, and I wrote down like, this is the house of love, positive energy, etc., etc. If you come into this house, you have to give everybody a hug, no matter what. And that was from what I saw from on your website. And besides the fact that I love giving hugs, and now you saying first 4 minutes coming home, I'm like, that's perfect, because that all ties into that. You come home, you give everybody a hug, including the dogs, and that's perfect. And then you can continue what we just mentioned. So I really love what you said.
Let me just do the detail on the hugs, class. The detail on the hugs. Forget the science. This just works. It's called the 7-second hug. Okay, so the average hug, if you're a huggy person, the average hug lasts 2.1 seconds. So most people go home, or they'll hug their mum or whatever. So it's 1, 2, finished. Yeah, but for the love to transfer between two people, a hug needs to last 7 seconds or longer. And man, that's a long time, right? That's a long time. Now, there should only be about 12 people in your life, a maximum of 15, who are emotionally close enough to get a 7-second hug. So it's not for a stranger in the park. But these 12 people in your life, even if you're a non-hugger, the dads listening to this, I want you to experiment. Your homework from me is to go home and hug for 7 seconds. Oh, I always say don't count out loud, because that kills the minute, kills them. You know, if you're 1, 2, then it doesn't work. And also, remember, they're expecting 2 seconds, and you're going to give them 7 seconds. So after 4, they start wriggling, they start trying to get away. So, which is even better, because you have to squeeze those last 3 seconds real tight. It's a beautiful thing. And do you know what? The reason I like it is because you don't need to say anything. The 7 seconds is just long enough for that person to know that you love them. It's an I love you hug. No words necessary.
I love it. And I read it right in the 7 seconds, because I started it just today, this morning. And I started counting in my head, like, okay, I really got to do this. And my kids love it, like, especially my 5-year-old. He loves it. Like, he'll come up to me and give me hugs. Like I'm a hugger, so he knows that I'm always giving him hugs. My wife has a little bit harder time with it, but you know, everything as
she'll get used to it, man. Every day, 7-second hug, just one a day, and she'll know you love her.
Exactly. But I also saw, because then I started, hey, I can't find the message, and started looking, and I saw, I think it was on Twitter, where you were saying something about 4 hugs, 8 hugs, and 12 hugs a day.
That was, that's Virginia Satir, I think. So we need hugs for survival. We need love for survival. I mean, if I share some terrible parenting stuff that I've been researching recently, just trying to write a new book, and there's a chapter on parenting. But if you go back as recently as the 1940s, that was the first time where we started to realize that germs and bacteria spread by human contact. Previous to that, we used to think that germs transmitted via smell. So what happened in the 1940s is the children's hospitals and the orphanages at that time became antiseptic clean. So what they would do, because they wanted to save lives, is the children in an orphanage would be in a crib with a mosquito net over them. The floor was scrubbed totally clean, and the thinking was, to keep those children safe, then we can't handle them. We can't give them any human contact, because germs were killing children. That was the thinking at the time. And in some orphanages, mate, in America in the 1940s, nearly 100% of children were dying in orphanages. So we had the most clean, sterile environment, with the children in their crib with a mosquito net round. And what became clear was that there was no love. And we were actually dying from lack of love, which breaks my heart, my friend. It absolutely breaks my heart. Yeah. So it's only really since and it's only really since the 1940s that we've begun to realize that love is the most important ingredient that we can possibly give them. Yeah. Sorry, I can't remember what the question was to that. I just had to tell you about the 1940s, because it's painful. Painful.
I appreciate that. No, we were just talking about the hugs, and you mentioning or me noticing that Twitter message that you posted about 4 hugs, 8 hugs, and 12 hugs. And
12 hugs for, I think 4 hugs for survival. Yeah, and I think 12 hugs. Oh, wonderful. That's proper love. Yeah.
So that's the next step.
You'll have no time to do any work. You're too busy hugging everybody for 7 seconds. 12 7-second hugs for your whole family. That's a lot of hugging, man.
Yeah, well, that's what it takes. That's all. I'll just film it and then share it with people, and then I'm doing both at the same time. Anyway, in my opinion, the fearless father must be striving to be like what you mentioned earlier, the best dad in the world. And if I understand correctly from what I've read from you, the art of brilliance reminds people how to be their best self. So I was just wondering, what is your step-by-step system to get, to get someone, or someone must follow to become the best dad in the world?
Yeah, okay. Well, it's possibly not parenting specific, but having done a PhD in happiness and studied happy people all these years, there are lots of things they've got in common. The biggest thing is also the simplest thing, and that is that really happy, positive people consciously and deliberately choose to have a positive attitude. Okay, now I just want to unpick that one because I know it sounds really simple, and a lot of people say, "Have you spent 12 years studying, and that's all you can come up with?" They, the positivity. I'm not. Let me if I just clarify, happy people don't choose to be happy. So happiness isn't something you can choose. Happiness is an emotion. You can open up to it and let more happiness into your life, but it's not something you can choose. However, positivity is not an emotion, it's an attitude, and therefore it is within your control. You have to learn to do it, but it's within your control. And if the more you choose to be positive about your thought processes, your relationships, then the better your chance of being happy. Now, my breakthrough came a few years ago when I accidentally learned how to choose to be positive. So it's a bit of a strange one, but I was reading a self-help book, 2008 it was, and one of the sentences said, what you need to do is wake up in the morning being really grateful that you've not got toothache. And I can remember thinking that was a bit silly, but I thought I'll give it a go, I'll try it. And so I didn't just do it once, I did every single day for a whole year. So 365 times, get out of bed, put some effort into getting out of bed and going, woohoo, no toothache, what a fantastic start to the day, my teeth aren't hurting, I'm feeling great. So because I felt brilliant at 6 a.m, because my teeth aren't hurting, then when my kids came down for breakfast, I've got some music on, I'm dancing around, serving their breakfast with a smile. So my kids went off to school much happier in 2008 because Dad was happier, because they caught my emotions. And I did that every single day, and I tell you what, I came alive. I woke up, I had the energy of two people. It wasn't just my relationships at home, my career took off, everything in my life it was the best year of my life ever. So the next year, I thought, this is amazing. I've accidentally learned how to choose to be positive. So I thought, I'm going to keep it going, but I need to change it. So I changed it from toothache, kidneys. So I just changed the body part. So I would get out of bed the next year, give my kidneys a rub, or give my heart a feel and say, oh, kidneys are still working, heart's still beating. That's a good start to the day. And I tell you what, I know it sounds ridiculous. I don't have to do it anymore because it's normal. It's like ingrained in the thinking now. But I had to do that for about a year and a half. And I've still got the energy of two people. I feel amazing. And I would say that is, most people hit the snooze button and try and get another 9 minutes and 59 seconds of sleep before they drag themselves out of bed. And I used to do that as well. So what I'm really saying, it's not toothache and kidneys. It's those 4,000 weeks again, right? I'm 51. I'm not very clever, but I'm clever enough to understand that one day I won't be able to get out of bed. So one day I'm going to be too ill or I'm going to be too old. So what positive psychology, and particularly the choice to be positive, has really taught me is that while I can get out of bed, I may as well get out of bed like I really want to, like I really mean it. And I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is a big deal because most people are not doing that. Yeah, most people are going to come alive on Friday at 5 o'clock. Whereas I've decided to come alive on Monday at 6 a.m.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's inspiring. I hope people...
Well, it's gratitude, really, I suppose, just waking up, being alive. But most people don't wake up. Let me give you a choice, Klaas. I'll give you £1 million or not be dead. What are you going to go for?
Well, I would go for not be dead.
Yeah, okay. Me too. But... don't have to think too hard about that. I'll go with not be dead. Thank you very much. So what that means is really, when you wake up tomorrow, you are a millionaire. Life is worth. I could give you £10 million or not be dead. You'll still go not be dead. Yeah. So what that means is waking up tomorrow is worth £10 million. 10 million euros, really. But we don't wake up thinking that. We wake up thinking the opposite. So what we have to do all the time is rethink the thinking.
Absolutely. But the thing is there that nobody talks about death. Nobody thinks about it. It's like a bad subject. While I've been learning, and especially from the book that I've read, The 50th Law, with Robert Greene and 50 Cent, where he talks a lot about that. And it's like he flips it around. He uses it to energize himself and makes him live every single day to the max.
Well, death is a very focusing thought. And I don't think most people are really scared of death. I think we're scared of not quite having lived such a brilliant life, of getting to the final moment and having regrets, or getting to the final moment and realizing that I wasn't a brilliant dad, or, you know, that's the scary thing. So I think the best way to prepare for death is to have a brilliant life.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. You mentioned earlier that you're reading that book about children in the orphanage all dying because they didn't get any love. I see it last year, and it's not about death, but it was very heartbreaking experience. Like, I would pick up my oldest son from school after his karate lessons. And there was always 5 minutes before he would come, there was always this girl, and I think she was like 11 or 12, something like that. She was an older girl. And she had just such a sad expression on her face. And I mean, like sad, like her lips were hanging like this, and she was always like this. There was no smile, it was always the same expression. And I hope it was just because of that one lesson, but I actually saw her one time when I was walking the dogs, and she had the same expression. It just broke my heart every single time.
Mate,
and
the problem is these learned behaviours. You know, if she's like that at age 5, she'll probably be like that at age 55.
Exactly. But what I was wondering is, because I definitely do not want my kids to have any moment that they're like, well, they're going to have moments, but not like extended moments that they have such a face. So I'm just wondering, like, what could a father do to raise happy kids?
I think in terms of the home life, I like Dale Carnegie. If we go back to the 1930s, and then I'll give you an old one, then I'll give you a new one. So Dale Carnegie, 1930s, he wrote a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is a bit of a classic self-help book. But two things come out of his book, two things for me at least. The first one is to be genuinely interested in the people around you. And I mean genuinely interested. So taking that interest. So that's the 4-minute rule, really. And taking a great interest in your children. So when they come home from school, being insanely and intensely interested in what they've done. And the other one that he talks about in his book is to say nice things about people behind their back. So even when your children aren't there, or if you're just talking to one child, then saying nice things about the other child is a really powerful subconscious thing, because it gets back to the other child. So they will hear about it, but it's a really smart thing. It's a lot, once again, it's a lot cleverer than it sounds. My grandma used to say that if you haven't got anything nice to say about people, then don't say anything at all. And it turns out she's pretty right. So I would say keep your language really positive around your children. So be interested in what they're doing and say nice things behind their back. That's from the 1930s, and that still holds true as parenting today. And the more modern one is the Carol Dweck growth mindset. There's various theories around this. Essentially, positive and negative aren't equal. All right, so bad weighs more than good. So what that means is your brain is predisposed. Your brain is very good at noticing the bad things your children do. Your brain is very good at noticing the one bad driver that ruins your drive to work. Your brain is very good at noticing one angry customer which ruins your day, and it deletes all the good ones. And therefore, what that basically means is that you should be 3 times more positive than you are negative. So in your communication, not just with your children, but with your wife, with your work colleagues, so it's not 3 to 0, so you can be negative, but for every negative thing that you say, you should say 3 positives to counteract the negative. So 3 to 1, but that's the minimum. And in terms, I know you're aiming this podcast at males. Lads, if your relationship at home dips below 2 to 1, then it will probably end in divorce. There's some really strong stats there. So so you've got to keep your language positive. The minimum is 3 to 1. However, in the workplace, so let's apply it to the workplace, then high performance teams operate on a ratio of 6 to 1. So if I was in a meeting with you, or if I was in your office and I could hear 6 bits of praise, 6 bits of encouragement, 6 bits of laughter for every negative, I'd be fairly sure your team is performing well. And there's some new research coming out that applies to families. And they reckon, particularly with young children, the ratio at home should be 8 to 1. So you as a dad or your wife, and that once again, it's not 8 to 0. So you can be critical, and there's sometimes when you have to be critical of your children. But if I was in your house and I could hear 8 bits of laughter, 8 bits of praise and encouragement, catching your kid doing 8 small things really well for every negative, then I would suspect that family is bathed in love, and that's the environment that is conducive to bringing up really, really well-balanced children.
Wow, that's amazing information. Thanks for sharing that.
The trick is, as a parent, is to make them authentic and real. So kids don't want bullshit. They don't want praise for no reason, and the difficulty is to catch them. So in your case with little children, 8 times drawing nice pictures, 8 times brushing their teeth without being asked. Just small little things, saying, do you know what? Thank you for doing that. It's really made Dad's day. Small little things, noticing the small things becomes crucial. And I love it. I think 6 to 1 or 8 to 1 at home is very powerful. But getting them right, once again, it's not an exact science. And can I give you another one while it's in my head? It's a very little known thing, but I love it to bits. It's called the Matthew effect. I think it comes from a reading from the Bible. I'm not a religious person, but basically the Matthew effect means that, how do I explain it? A small success in something achieves a big breakthrough in learning, and the children then progress really quickly. So basically the Matthew effect is when the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. But if you apply it to parenting, let's apply it to reading. So children who go to school who are already able to read, then they take giant leaps of learning very quickly because the books get bigger and interesting and they start to enjoy reading. So those who can already read will accelerate at school hugely. Those who get to school unable to read, the Matthew effect means that they will fall behind, because all their peers, they will see everybody else accelerating away. They won't be able to catch up. So reading for them will become a chore, and the whole education will suffer. And do you know what the number one thing is to get boys reading? Is the biggest influence on boys picking a book up is whether their dad reads. So even if you can't read, dads, pretend. Sometimes switch off the TV, sit with a book, and if your son sees dad reading a book, that is the biggest single factor in your son also picking up a book. That's the Matthew effect. But it applies, I'm not just talking reading. If your children are doing music, buy yourself an instrument and learn with them. If your children want to do cooking, put your apron on and cook with them. You know, if your children want to do trampolining, bounce on the trampoline with them. The Matthew effect says it doesn't matter what it is, but some small wins and some enthusiasm from the parents mean the children will grow into that and they will take massive leaps of learning in the future. But you've got to help them. You've got to join in. Joining in is the key, which you're already doing. I know that in your case you're already doing it. I'm preaching to the rest of the dads listening to this. Dads, step up to the plate. Come on.
I'm learning so much from this. I'm loving it. The funny thing is, you mentioning, like, especially with boys, my parents, like my father and my mother, they read so much, and I never did until like a year or 2 years ago. And they tried everything and it didn't work. It didn't catch on. And now all of a sudden, I just started realizing, look, I need to read. I got all these mentors that I could just buy for like $10, $20. that I can learn so much from. Instead of keep failing at everything, I just buy a book. And I read myself, and I read while they're playing or doing their thing, but I also read them bedtime stories. And I want to talk to you about that in a little bit. What I want to talk to you about now is that, what you're doing with the Art of Brilliance and what I've seen so far looks absolutely amazing. And I can only imagine how crazy your schedule must be, giving your workshops and your speeches all over the place. So I'm just wondering, how do you manage your time to remain positive, happy, stress-free, and at the same time, in all areas in your life, still make sure that everybody gets the attention that they deserve, and you still get to do everything that you want to do?
Yeah, I'm not a saint. I don't get it right all the time. I'm very lucky that I love my work, and work doesn't feel like work. So I've managed to create a career where, I go around the world delivering courses on happiness and well-being, and I love what I do because I know that if people put into practice this really simple principles, it is fundamentally a life-changing thing. So I don't class it as work. I just enjoy it. However, I do work too hard. I do travel too much, and I'm not claiming to be perfect, but I think I've learned to slow down a little bit. I've learned to do less. So I've learned to say no, actually. Yeah, I've learned to say no. I mean, you got me onto this by sending me a beautiful little video and emotionally blackmailed me into it, my friend, which is very clever. But normally I would say no, simply because, if you say yes to everything, you sink under the weight of pressure. But I love my life, and I'm not complaining about being too busy. I love it. So, but I think looking after yourself is crucial, and I keep fit. I do exercise every day. So I'm not a young man, but I take the decision. If I'm staying away, I don't stay in a cheap hotel now. I stay in a nice hotel with a gym, and I will get up at 6 a.m. and I'll do 45 minutes because it keeps me mentally sharp, it keeps me physically fit, and that boosts my own well-being. So that's how I do it. I keep physically fit. I don't drink stupid amounts of alcohol. I try and look after myself. Luckily, I've married a lovely lady who cooks me healthy food as well. So I'm a lucky man.
Nice. Yeah, that's also awesome. My wife cooks, and I love it. It frees up so much space, time, and stress. I think
generally, do you know what? Females across the board are superheroes. Females are superheroes. And I think in most families, the mum is always the superhero. And I think in high performance families, it's the dad who also steps up to the plate. So I think in your case, then you've also taken a decision to be the best dad in the world, which is the best thing you can do for your children. But often it's the mum who is a superhero and the dad isn't. So this is the message to dads, to put your pants on the outside and step up to it, lads.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the reason why I started becoming a fearless father, especially taking my kids to school and then watching other fathers and then watching their kids. It made me so sad, and I was like, yeah, I want to change. Like, I felt all of a sudden like I want to change, and that's a different story. I'm not going to go into that because I want to use you for the time that you're here. But I just stepped up, and now I'm trying to inspire everybody else to do the same.
Well, you're inspiring me, Clay. You're inspiring me for sure. Yeah. Do you know what? I've started to think about, positive psychology particularly. I've started to think about it like most people. Imagine you lived in an egg. Just go with this one. Imagine you lived in an egg. And a lot of people are living in the egg and being really busy making the egg comfortable and making the egg pretty and decorating the egg so it's nice and homely. And we're really busy making our eggs really, really comfortable. For me, positive psychology is about hatching out of the egg. It's about daring to transform into a better version of yourself. There's a whole world outside that egg that's there for everybody. It's a glorious world. But we got to be brave to take the step. And too many people are living their 4,000 weeks safely inside their comfort zones or their eggs. And I think what you're trying to do and what I'm trying to do is get people to hatch out into the brave new world, new thinking, new ways of doing things. And it's much more exciting when you've hatched. It's much more exciting outside of the egg. It really is.
Well, that
makes any sense. It makes sense in my head, but I don't know.
No, no, I understand. What I would add is that you actually, once you're out of the egg, you grab the egg and throw it in the water, so you get that ripple effect of what you.
Hey, I say, I like it. Yeah, are you aware of the ripple? Have you heard of the ripple effect, by the way? The fact your emotions are bigger than you. Can we cover that one? This is so
Uh,
big.
yeah, please share.
So human beings are emotional creatures. We are wired to connect emotionally. So a human being on their own is not good. We get depressed and lonely very quickly. So what happens is we need other human beings for our mental well-being. So because of that, our emotions are basically what we call an open loop, which means that we are all, it's like a Wi-Fi, we're all logging onto each other's feelings. So you can't not do that. Now what happens is your happiness is bigger than you. So your happiness is good for you. So if you're happy, that's good for your energy, it's good for your creativity, it's good for your vitality. But it also reaches 3 people removed from you. So what that means is when my kids come down for breakfast and I do the 4-minute rule and I'm serving there with a happiness, so my kids, so straight away I'm happy, and because I'm happy, my children will catch that happiness. So they'll go to school 16% happier because dad was happy. But it doesn't stop there. Because my children are 16% happier, then their teacher will catch my happiness. I've not met their teacher, but their teacher catches my happiness by 10%. But it doesn't stop there either, because that teacher has had a happy day at school, goes home to her family have now caught my happiness by 6%. So I've not met the teacher, I've not met the teacher's family, and yet they are both benefiting from me doing the 4-minute rule over breakfast. And I think this contagious nature of emotion, the ripple effect, as you just called it, which is what I call it in my PhD, is such a big deal, because you create a happy family. That family then creates a happy street. That street then creates a happy community or a happy school. So I think that your happiness as a parent is almost your gift to the world. The fact that it's bigger than you makes it so, so important.
Yeah, exactly.
Negativity also spreads 3 degrees.
Yep.
So you're having a bad day. Yeah.
Which makes it a fantastic opportunity, but at the same time a fantastic how do you call that? I was going to pop in my head obligation, but not obligation, but responsibility.
No, it's a good word. It's a good word. It's almost a responsibility. I don't want to get, it's too heavy if you say it's your moral duty to be happy, because that's too much pressure. But you need to understand that when you're having a bad day, that doesn't just impact on your children, that impacts on their friends and their friends' friends as well. Okay. Yep. So we're creating a ripple everywhere we go. Now think of how many people you meet over your 4,000 weeks. You can create a tsunami of positivity if you decide to go for it.
Yeah. Wow. And I'm enjoying myself right now. I'm learning so much. I really appreciate this, Andy. I want to go into something else, because you also mentioned in your bio that you are a learning junkie. And I'm just wondering, what does that mean for you, and what makes you a learning junkie?
A learning junkie. I am a late developer, so I wasn't. I didn't do very well at school, but I was about 35 when I realised that I'm reasonably intelligent and I'm not making the most of it. And I started learning at 35, and I enrolled on a PhD at 40. Okay, and I came alive with it, and I've been learning, soaking up so much learning. And I write children's books. It's a very strange thing. I've realized I can write. I just discovered that I could write at age 35. Well, I mean, what was I? Why did school not discover I could write? I don't know what was going on in my life. So I came alive, really. So my learning, I just learn everything. I don't read novels anymore. I read personal development. I read academic papers. I watch TED Talks. I listen to podcasts every moment. So I travel a lot. I'm in a car sometimes 4 or 5 hours a day going up and down the country. Podcast, learning, audiobooks all the time. I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. And I'm hoping that'll continue forever, as long as my brain can keep soaking up these messages.
Well, according to Anthony Robbins, that's the most important thing. Like, if we keep learning, we keep progressing, we keep living. If not, then we just wither away without. So I'm glad you also brought up that the fact that you write children's stories. I absolutely love reading my kids bedtime stories. I make it into I have an evening routine that I try to always follow, and of course with the live interviews at this time it's going to be a little difficult. But you know, you've written children's books, as I mentioned before. Can you tell us a little bit more about the books that you've written, why it's so important to read to our children, and how it can improve the experience? I know how I can improve the experience for my kids. So now I let them choose, or I choose a book and then I read. But what can I do extra when I'm reading? Yeah, sorry, I'm a little selfish sometimes.
We're back to the Matthew effect. I write a series called Spy Dog and Spy Cat. So basically, my stories are it's like a James Bond character, but it's a dog and a cat, and it's secret undercover agent. So my dog is an MI5 agent undercover as a family pet. So that's the story. However, what I really love reading bedtime stories to my children, but for a while, for a few years, I read them badly. I was too busy, so I had too many emails to do. So I would always read the bedtime story really quickly. And in fact, you can test me on the story. I've got no idea what's in the story because I wasn't really listening. I was just reading it really quickly to get it finished, to get back to the emails. And then I had this epiphany moment where I decided, how would the best dad in the world read tonight's story? A very, very simple question. How would the best dad in the world read it? And I already knew the answer. I just hadn't been doing it. So I thought, okay, what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to read it like the best dad in the world. And the answer's obvious. So I got the book off the bedside table. I opened the page, my son got all snuggled up, and I read him a story. And the baddie had a baddie voice. The goodie had a goodie voice. The action came alive. The funny bits were really funny. We didn't miss any of it out. I was disappointed to get to the end, and I turned the page over and left it on a cliffhanger. Dun, dun, dun. What's going to happen tomorrow night? Yes, put the book on the bedside table. 7-second hug. Back downstairs to the emails. And I have to say, it took me 2 minutes longer, but it was the highlight of my day. And I started to do that every single night, is reading a bedtime story like I was the best dad in the world. I just pretended I was the best dad in the world. And that was probably one of the smallest things. What that really did was that took the bedtime story off my to-do list, like a chore, onto what I call my to-be list. So who am I being while I'm reading that story? That's the question. So all the time, it's less about what you're doing and more about who are you being while you're doing it. So yeah, just read the bedtime story like the author wanted it read. It's simple. Comes alive.
I like the to-be list. That's very powerful.
But it's also magical moments, mate. You know, you spending 10 minutes reading a bedtime story to your children. Go back to the Matthew effect, right? Your children are excited about books. They're going to be learning to read really quickly. They're going to go to school. They'll be able to read. Everything accelerates. So all the time, we're back to the same thing. Is you're the role model. You're instilling good habits in your children early, and that will set them up for the rest of their lives.
Exactly. Great. Well, that was perfect. We'll end with that. I'm just wondering, how can fathers get in touch with you if they want to learn more from you, or if they have some more questions in regards to the amazing amount of value and information you've shared with us in this hour? How can they do that?
Well, we are www.artofbrilliance.co.uk, or we've got a whole series of books out there on emotional intelligence and the art of being brilliant and shine and happiness. If you just put Andy Cope into Amazon, I'm sure my name will crop up. And I know you're in Spain, so they're available in Spanish as well, some of my books. So we are in multilingual. So yeah, just drop me an email, andy@artofbrilliance.co.uk, or follow me on Twitter @beingbrilliant.
Excellent. Great. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. To everybody, I hope you have blown away and has learned as much as I have. I got my whole notebook full of notes that I'm going to start implementing actually right now. I wish everybody best of luck, and we'll see each other on our next live interview. Bye-bye.
Cheers, boss.
Are you still meeting up with your friends now that you're a father? Kids making you stress out, you got no time for yourself to work out, read, or relax. Can you still remember the time you were hanging out with your friends, feeling energetic, happy, and confident? Spending time together and talking about your life and your crazy dreams. You're feeling alone now, don't you? No one to share your challenges with, and you're just running around from one storm into the next. Well, it's time to change this now. Join me and the Brotherhood of Fearless Fathers to speak on a weekly basis with like-minded dads to crush your challenges, face your fears with determination, be held accountable, and regain control of your life. If you want to become the hero your family needs you to be, then go to becomeafearlessfather.com/brotherhood. I'm looking forward to seeing you on one of our next calls.